Here's the truth about the Cmmg Zeroed 36 suppressor. It sounds fantastic on 147 grain 9mm, and it sounds kind of meh on everything else. Hey folks, I am glad you're here. Welcome back to the Average EDC YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience with the Cmmg Zeroed 36 suppressor. This is a 36 caliber can, so anything that is 36 or below that, it is going to work with. So I tested it out on a handful of calibers. The main ones were 9mm, shot a ton of that through this. I also did some 5.56 just to see if this would be passable on something like that, and then I did it on some 300 blackout as well to see how it would handle what's supposed to be a quieter rifle round. I'm going to talk about a handful of different aspects when it comes to this suppressor. I'm going to talk about the materials, I'm going to talk about the mounting, the sound performance obviously on specific calibers. I'm going to talk about the weight, how it heats up and cools down, a whole bunch of things, how the hub on it works and is supported. If you're interested in jumping around to different parts of the video, there are timestamps down in the description. Cmmg did send this suppressor out to me for review. I am otherwise not paid for the review, but I do get to keep the suppressor at the end, so keep that in mind. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk about is going to be materials. This is 17-4 stainless steel. It does have a nitride surface finish that's going to make it corrosion resistant overall. It's very typical when it comes to materials, and it's very typical when it comes to that finish as well. As far as the dimensions of this thing goes, it is 6.2 inches long and it is 1.58 inches wide, so it's kind of on the average end of size and diameter when it comes to suppressors that come in this form factor, especially ones that are optimized for 9mm. One thing that is not average about this suppressor is going to be the weight. It's actually a little bit heavier, actually quite a bit heavier than a lot of other 9mm suppressors that are out there on the market. It does have some heft to it. It does kind of drag your barrel down, but it is 13.7 ounces, and that is without any kind of mounting system inside of the hub. So once you throw that in there, it gets up to 15+ ounces. So you're looking at almost a pound, whereas most 9mm suppressors that are in this same form factor are coming in closer to 7, 8, or 9 ounces. That can make things just a little bit unwieldy. If I am out all the way here, I can definitely feel that pressure downward. But the nice thing about that is it's going to keep your muzzle flat while you're shooting it. And if you shoot with this thing on and then take it off, your gun becomes so incredibly light and so incredibly controllable at the same time. It's almost like a weight trainer. I'm not saying you should look into getting a suppressor just for that aspect of making your gun feel a little bit lighter. It's like swinging with 2 bats or a bat weight on or something like that, and then going and swinging the bat without a weight on. Regardless, this thing is a little bit on the hefty side. The next thing I want to talk about is hub compatibility. So this is hub compatible. It's got those threads in there that are the same thing everybody else is doing, which is really smart, and I'm glad everybody is buying into it, but the 1.375 by 24 thread pitch. So you can swap in and out a whole bunch of different adapters in here. Now the thing to note is that this specific suppressor only ships with a 1/2 by 28 and a 5/8 by 24. So you can get it on your typical stuff, your AR-15s, you can even direct thread it to a 9mm handgun if you really want to, even though it's probably not going to cycle if you do that. And you can throw it on something like a 300 blackout that has that 5/8 by 24 thread pitch. But Cmmg does not make their own Nielsen device, so you are going to have to go third party to find yourself a Nielsen device that is hub compatible and will work with the suppressor if you want to shoot it reliably on handguns. That's what I did. I went with a Yankee Hill machine. I found it somewhere on the internet, the cheapest price that I could find, and then I found a random piston as well at my local gun shop. Shout out to Neck Shop Precision in Orem, Utah, and it all came together and worked perfectly fine. But just keep in mind, Cmmg does not make their own Nielsen device. You'll have to shop around and find your own. The next subject is probably the thing that people care the most about, and that is going to be the sound performance on this thing. Again, there are 3 main calibers that I wanted to play with this on because they're kind of the 3 main calibers that people try to suppress overall, or at least tolerate suppressing when it comes to 5.56 and 2.23, because it does not suppress super well. But obviously, I worked with this on 9mm, and that is going to be the caliber that it shines on, is subsonic 9mm. 147 grains out of this thing sound fantastic. It has this really nice tone to it overall, and it does make your handgun sound like, but a little bit quieter than, a nail gun. Here are some of those shots with 147 grain 9mm without me talking over it, so you can appreciate how quiet it is. I tried this on 2 different handgun hosts. So this is my everyday carry everything gun, my P365 fuse, kind of Frankenstein-y build with the tac ops lower and then a fuse upper. I threw in a true barrel that I got recently so that I could shoot this in this configuration, and this gun specifically performed fantastic and sounded really good. I also tried this on a Glock variant, a Glock 17 variant specifically, and that also felt really good and was relatively reliable overall. I did have a handful of stoppages. I think that's probably due to the Nielsen device itself from Yankee Hill Machine. I probably needed to clean and lube it a little bit more than I did, and so I did get some hang-ups and some failure to go into batteries a whole bunch, but that was the only failure that I had in this. And while it was relatively persistent overall, there were times when I ran through full mags without any issues whatsoever. It does slow down shooting your handgun a little bit, but it's something that you can fine tune over time and make it work just fine. The next best suppressed caliber that I tested this on is going to be 300 Blackout. So I've got a 9.5 inch 300 Blackout shorty that I threw this on, and it did fine. It makes it hearing safe. It makes it so you can totally take your Ear Pro off and shoot way comfortably, but it's definitely not as quiet as my Dead Air Nomad, which is, I believe, a little bit longer if I remember right, if not exactly the same length, and quite a bit wider when it comes to the diameter. That thing is just optimized for 30 caliber rounds and does such a good job suppressing. These would not be a good direct comparison. It would not be wise for me to compare the Zeroed 36 versus the Nomad because they're in completely different realms in my opinion. But when it comes to the Zeroed 36 specifically, it does a really, really good job on 300 Blackout, definitely passable. Here are some 300 Blackout shots without me talking over them so you can really hear the sound. Now when it comes to 5.56, that's where it was a little bit disappointing. Honestly, you might as well just not put a suppressor on at all. It does definitely get rid of some of the concussive forces, and it's way better than having a brake on your gun, especially if you're shooting around other people. But when it comes to sound signature, again, my Nomad does a way better job, better than a brake or a flash hider or something like that, but not super great on 5.56 and 2.23 overall. Here are some shots with the 5.56 just so you can hear how much that rattles, and then I'll put a couple where it's 9mm, 300 Blackout, and 5.56 just so you can hear the difference between the three of them.
Are you sick of the earmuff fatigue yet? Then go check out Axil's lineup of Bluetooth-capable hearing-safe earbuds. From the long-lasting battery life of the corded GS Extreme 2.0 to the absolute freedom of the Axil X-Core earbuds, Axil's rechargeable hearing-safe buds are sure to make those long-range sessions way more comfortable. Check out their lineup in the link down in the description.
All right, The next thing I think is worth talking about is going to be the heating and cooling of this suppressor. When it comes to handgun calibers, 9mm specifically, this thing does not get very hot at all. I think that's pretty typical, but you could totally run this thing a whole bunch and touch it and switch it between different handgun hosts and not have any issues with it getting too hot in that situation. Obviously, once we get up to rifle calibers, this thing's gonna heat up pretty quickly, and it's gonna stay hot for quite a while. Again, comparing this to the Nomad, in some ways, I do feel like the Nomad cools down a little bit faster. At least that's how I felt when I was out shooting this a lot, and then needing to swap it from 300 Blackout to a 5.56 gun. I had to wait quite a while or quench it before I could do that without burning myself. Again, I think this is optimized for handgun calibers specifically, and if you use it that way, you're not gonna have to deal with too much heat in general. Another important thing to bring up here is going to be back pressure. That's something that people are gonna care a lot about because this has plenty of it. It is going to toss stuff back in your face a lot, and the evidence comes in on your optic. My optics got super cloudy on the front lens because of how much gunk this suppressor throws backwards at you and at the optic. So you're definitely gonna wanna wear eye pro while shooting this, unless you're okay with getting bits and pieces of barrel gunk thrown back in your face. There is a ton of back pressure in this, not to the point where you get gassed. I didn't feel like I was getting a ton of gas to the face. I just felt like I was getting a lot of debris to the face. And again, that debris was showing up a lot on my optics. The last thing I want to talk about here is going to be price. And when it comes to price, this is another place where the Zeroed 36 really shines because it comes in at close to $500. You can find it from anywhere from $500 to like $900, but if you're paying close to $900 for this, you are getting scammed. With a quick Google search, I was able to find this at several retailers for close to $500. Add in a transfer fee and you can still get this thing for under $600. And for its performance, again, on 147 grain 9mm, I think that is a steal for a 9mm can. It definitely comes in lower than other cans that are at this same price point that have very similar features. Again, it's gonna be a little bit heavier and it's gonna be limited to doing really well on 9mm, but if that's what you're looking for, which is kind of what I was looking for, then it's a really good value in my opinion. All right, so this part's gonna be a little bit of a sell, but where does this fit into the average EDC lifestyle? Because we are not tactical EDC, we are not elite EDC, we are average EDC. We are just everyday dudes out here carrying guns. And how does this fit in? Because I think that the way that suppressors have been viewed and still are very popularly viewed are as an expensive accessory that's not necessary to your lineup and setups. And I would have to disagree. I think that these things are very intelligent, not only for your health, but also for the health of people around you. And they could also give you a slight tactical advantage in certain situations. Say there are multiple assailants in a place, you're out in public, you've got your backpack slung, this thing's holstered in a Ragnarok or however you want to hold it in your backpack, and you need to address those multiple assailants. You don't want to give away where you're shooting from very easily. If you were just raw dogging the normal muzzle of this gun, it would be very loud. It would be very easy to find where you're shooting from. This is gonna make it a little bit easier because, again, this thing is quieter than a nail gun. Still not like super quiet, like they do in the movies, like in John Wick, shooting at each other in a mall and nobody notices. But this is going to definitely quiet that sound signature quite a bit and maybe conceal your position for a little bit longer, giving you a chance for follow-up shots without being shot at. That may be a fanciful situation that I'm putting together, but regardless, I think that this thing has value. I think it does a really good job when it comes to 9mm overall. I wouldn't necessarily get it with the thought that you're gonna use it on tons of different calibers a lot. I would personally look at this as a dedicated 9mm can, but that is just me. And again, that is how it fits into my average EDC lifestyle. It's also just super super fun. If you are interested in checking out the Cmmg Zeroed 36 caliber can, there is a link down in the description. It'll take you over to the Cmmg website and you can go and check out what they have to say about it. Folks, I hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. Tons more content coming down the pipeline, tons more stuff that fits into the average everyday carry. If you like that, make sure to stick around and I will catch you in the next one.